Welcome to Wawas on Wire. Today we're talking about the ongoing political exchange between our current prime minister and a former prime minister. It really feels like in Malaysian politics, the word apology has become, well, almost a strategic move, hasn't it? Almost a weapon, rather than just saying sorry. We've seen it play out so clearly recently. The demand for an apology itself has kicked off this huge debate across the country. And it makes you wonder, is this really about accountability? Or is there maybe a deeper game being played? I mean, think about it. In our everyday lives, right? A simple muff can sort things out. Like maybe a small mix-up over parking or, a disagreement between friends. But when you get to the highest levels of power, it just seems the stakes are completely different. What are your thoughts on this? Does an apology from a politician feel different to you? Does it carry more weight?
Okay, let's try and unpack this a bit. So, the current Prime Minister, Anwar Ibrahim, has publicly said that former Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin needs to apologize. And it's not being vague about it. He's pointing to what he calls defamatory statements against the government he leads.
Right, and what's really interesting here is how specific these accusations are. The Prime Minister, Anwar, he's specifically mentioned, claims that the government is tyrannical, and crucially that it's withheld development money for states like Kelantan. He even mentioned hundreds of other similar claims. So it's not just a general complaint. These are really politically charged statements, aren't they? They touch on things people care about, fairness, how the country's run. So the big question is, why these particular claims? Why are these the ones needing an apology out of everything else? What makes them so potent right now?
Exactly. And then this is where it gets really interesting, I think. Prime Minister Anwar himself then offered a kind of conditional apology. He said he completely doesn't mind apologizing to Muhyiddin if the Malaysian Communications and Multimedia Commission, the MCMC, investigates and confirms that his own sources were wrong, specifically about those alleged statements Muhyiddin supposedly made about increasing burdens on foreigners.
So it's not a straightforward sorry. It's tied to an official finding.
Yeah, that conditional apology, it's quite a tactic, isn't it? It really shows how much fact-checking and, well, public perception matter in politics today. By linking his apology to the Malaysian Communications and Multimedia Commission's findings, he's sort of projecting this image of transparency and accountability. It's like saying, look, I stand by what I said, but hey, I'll accept it if an independent body proves me wrong.
Right. A calculated move.
Definitely. And he also used that moment, quite cleverly, to talk about the government's economic policies. He mentioned things like the targeted electricity subsidies and the RON95 petrol subsidies, explaining they're meant to help Malaysians and, tackle the national deficit.
So shifting the focus a bit. Exactly. Shifting it away from just personal attacks and towards defending policy. Meanwhile, you've got former Prime Minister Muhyiddin flat out denying he made those statements about foreigners. And he's basically saying to Anwar, show me the proof. So it's a classic standoff, really. One side wants an apology for alleged defamation. The other wants proof for alleged misrepresentation.
And the public reaction, well, it's been all over the place, as you'd probably expect. A lot of people online were quick to label the current prime minister a spin master, pointing out things they see as inconsistencies. We saw comments, saying the whole thing is childish, like watching kids argue in the playground. I saw things like, this is the level of Malaysia's prime minister. Oh, my goodness. And just their thinking and actions are like little kids.
Yeah.
Someone even called him the best spin king. Pretty direct stuff.
Yeah, that public sentiment really taps into this whole question of how political conversations are changing, especially when something like an apology becomes so layered and complex. A lot of the criticism seems focused on perceived hypocrisy, doesn't it? People are remembering times when the current prime minister, back when he was in opposition, made some pretty strong statements himself against previous governments and didn't apologize later.
So they're asking if the standard is being applied consistently.
Exactly. Is this demand for an apology consistent with his own past actions? People have long memories for this stuff, and they bring up past promises, too. Things like abolishing the PTPTN loans, the National Higher Education Fund Corporation loans, or that promise about getting RN95 petrol down to RM 1.5Z per liter.
The GST to SST shift as well.
Right, the goods and services tax to the sales and services tax change. Some feel these pledges weren't fully delivered. You see comments like, you have scammed 34 million people with that promise, why don't you apologize? It shows that frustration is there. And this whole discussion about development money for states like Kelantan and Terengganu, that really hits a nerve. It speaks to a real public concern about fairness, making sure resources are shared equitably, no matter which party is in charge there.
But then you've got the other side, too. Strong voices supporting the prime minister. Many see him taking a necessary stand here, trying to uphold integrity, push back against what they see as baseless claims. They genuinely believe Muhyiddin should apologize for statements they feel are unsubstantiated, especially ones that might damage trust in the current government. There was one comment saying, "It's important for Muhyiddin to apologize because slander like this cannot be allowed. The public needs to know the truth."
And not be influenced by lies.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that one too.
And another one. I strongly agree with the Prime Minister. All slander should not be left unattended. Those who slander must be held accountable.
To restore public trust.
Right. So for them, it's about accountability and truth. Which brings us back to the intention behind all these demands, doesn't it? For some people, maybe it really is about holding politicians to account for what they say, making sure statements are factual. A kind of push for responsible politics.
Okay, that makes sense. But then you have to consider the strategic angle too. Could it also be a way to, perhaps, deflect other criticisms? Or to control the narrative, maybe regain the upper hand in this whole public argument? It's probably a mix of both, depending on who you ask. And supporters of the current government, they often talk about the commitment to national progress, right? Helping all Malaysians, regardless of where they live or who they voted for. They argue that leaders like the Prime Minister are genuinely trying to ensure fair development everywhere, and that these kinds of accusations just get in the way. And you can't ignore the wider political context. Parties like the Malaysian Indian Congress, the Malaysian Chinese Association, and the United Malays National Organization, their positions and alliances often shape how these disputes are seen and, let's be honest, spun to the public.
Yeah, the party dynamics definitely play a role.
Absolutely. There was another comment that summed up that supportive view quite well. I agree with the Prime Minister. Accusations without basis are truly damaging the reputation of our government. Where is the justice? It really highlights that desire for fairness and truth in how politics is discussed. This goes beyond just these two individuals. It's about political trust itself.
So where does all this leave Malaysia? What does it mean for our politics moving forward? Maybe the real question isn't just who apologizes or even if they apologize. Maybe it's about the kind of political culture we're actually building or allowing to be built.
That's a deep question.
Will demanding apologies actually lead to more truthful conversations? Will politicians be more careful, more accountable? Or are we just going to see more elaborate games of words, more strategic maneuvering where sincerity takes a back seat?
It's a tough balance, isn't it, between accountability and political strategy.
It really makes you think. In this kind of environment where every word seems like a potential weapon, can we actually have genuine reconciliation? And, when will the focus finally shift away from blaming each other and onto actually, building the nation together? Remember to like and subscribe for more videos like this.